Hey everybody, Chromos here with another Wars on the Sim Battle video, and this time we will take a look at a few fights in the BF-109 G-6, another one of the BF-109s I promised to take a look at, and the first one at rank 4. Now, I know I've been focusing on the German planes quite a bit lately, and I hope you don't mind. I find them a challenge and therefore enjoyable at those higher ranks to fly, but I will of course take a look at other nations' planes again soon as well. For example, I plan to do a Mark 16 Spitfire video when the British are back in the queue, and then maybe a Griffin or Tempest video as well. But this time the queue switched before I could get around to doing that. Just wanted to mention that. Well then, let's talk a little bit about the BF-109 G6, about the original one and what makes the G6 we have in War Thunder kind of special compared to a quote-unquote normal G6. Now, the G6 is the most produced BF-109 variant and of course succeeded the G2 in production, and it is the first BF-109 which replaces the rifle caliber MG17s in the cowling with the 13mm MG131 heavy machine guns. The plane has some very large bulges on the cowling which are necessary to cover the larger guns, which of course have a negative impact on the aerodynamics of the plane. Also, the G6 soon introduced the new Gallant-Panzer armor behind the pilot, with a large armored glass window in the middle, which greatly improves the visibility to the rear of the plane. A very important and useful change that makes both vertical maneuvers as well as defensive flying with an opponent behind you much easier. That new armor layout alone would make me pick the G6 over earlier BF-109 variants, as I despise the normal armor plate and the visibility loss they cause. So the G6 was an improvement when it comes to firepower as well as visibility. Now, as far as performance goes though, the G6 was initially a bit of a step back though. The plane uses the same DB605 engine, the same that the G2 uses. However, it gained some weight and also is aerodynamically worse because of the bulges of the machine guns, for example. So the G6 was a bit slower than the G2, it climbed a bit worse and it turned a bit worse. Keeping this in mind, I was not expecting much when I first took the plane out on a test flight, which wasn't too long ago since I unlocked most higher rank BF-109s somewhat recently. However, as soon as I first took off in the plane and I took a look at the boost gauge, I realized the plane has an ace up its sleeve. On takeoff power, or WEP as we usually call it, the boost of the plane is 1.7 ATA, not 1.42, as I would have expected from this engine, and that means that the G6 in War Thunder is equipped with MW50 injection, and that in turn means that our G6 is basically a G14. So at 100% or military power, the G6 will perform worse than the G2, as it simply is a heavier plane with the same horsepower. On war emergency power, however, the MW50 allows the G6 to run much higher boost, which gives it a massive horsepower increase. So on war emergency power, the G6 is faster and climbs better and has in general better power to weight ratio than the G2. Compared to its competition, the G2 has the usual BF-109 traits. It won't turn as well as most of the fighters it will face and is often a bit slower, even with MW50. But on WEP it has an exceptional power to weight ratio, allowing it to energy fight well in the vertical. Now, the good power to weight ratio is your trump card in a lot of situations. That is especially true with allied fighters, as they are often heavier and often have a lower power to weight ratio despite more horsepower. Most Russian fighters on the other hand are pretty light as well though, like the LA-7 and the LA-7P-20 and especially the Yak-3P. Those three are the most common opponents you will face in the G6 in that matchup, and they are also great energy fighters and also good in the vertical. Something to keep in mind. So you have to be careful there, and best engage with an energy advantage to begin with if at all possible, as it is more difficult to gain one. Well then, that was a short overview of the plane. Let's take a look at the fighter too in the G6. Here we are on the Kherson map, and I was climbing a bit at first on my way towards the middle of the map, as I see some AA fire below me. We are still over friendly troops at this point, so the plane passing below me and being fired upon has to be enemy. So I decide to turn around and give chase. From what I can tell at this point, the plane does have an inline engine, so it is a Yak, not an LA-7. Most likely a Yak-3, and it is going pretty fast. Even coming down from altitude and building up speed, I'm only getting closer slowly. The Yak most likely dived down from altitude earlier as well, so it's pretty fast as well too. Now the plane I'm chasing pulled up a bit and turned slightly and then dived down on the deck again, and I follow, slowly getting closer. Now, as I do so, it turns out the plane is indeed a Yak-3, though I can't tell if it is a normal Yak-3 or a Yak-3B, though it is most likely that it is a Yak-3B, as they are a lot closer in battle rating to the G-6. As I get closer, the Yak-3 is turning slightly, and here you have to be careful. While I had an energy advantage coming from higher altitude, the Yak-3B is faster in level flight at this altitude, and thanks to being exceptionally lightweight, has a very good energy retention in turns. So as long as this chase is going on, I lose the edge in energy I had at the beginning. I'm not sure though if my opponent is doing that on purpose, so I take the risk and hope I can close into fire range before he takes evasive action. But before I can fire, the Yak-3 does a sharp turn to the left, and of course I don't follow but go up in the vertical, hoping his tight turn cost him enough energy to give me the edge. The extremely lightweight Yak-3 turns better than a G6 of course, and has a great energy retention in turns, so if you try to follow in a tight turn, you will lose. I dive on the Yak-3, which is indeed a Yak-3B, which has leveled out and is going straight, and then goes into a wide turn, which again helps to equalize any energy advantage I have from coming down from altitude. And again the Yak-3 then pulls hard to the left and I go vertical. Here I misjudge the energy of the Yak-3 though, and I come around a bit too early. I would have had the speed to keep going up longer. That gives the Yak-3 the ability to just fire a burst as I come down. But it is close and the Yak-3 runs out of speed and stalls as it passes. That gives me a bit of an extra edge in energy. Now the Yak-3B dives down on the deck to regain some speed and then levels out again. As he turned left twice already, I this time position myself so that I have a chance for a shot if he does it again. And indeed, as I close in the third time, this time with more of an energy advantage, he pulls to the left again and I can just line up a shot and get a burst off, which sets the Yak-3 on fire. And I go back up to observe the effect and, if necessary, come back down to attack again. The fire eventually goes out, but by this time the Yak-3 approached our own airfield and is finished off by the AAA. Now with the Yak-3B down, I made my way slowly from the airfield back to the middle of the map, and on my way there someone asked for help. With someone in trouble I went there as fast as possible without much climbing involved. And as I approached, I could spot 2 or 3 planes fighting from pretty far away, and I hope I can get the drop on an enemy plane as it focused on somebody else. As I close in, I at first thought that this is a rather small dogfight involving only 2 or 3 planes, but as I get closer it turns out I was apparently not the only one flying this way, and we are suddenly in the middle of a big furball, with multiple friendly and enemy planes joining in on the fun. I hope I can get a shot and fire on a target of opportunity while flying through the middle of the action at full speed and then go up. And as I charge through the developing furball, an IL-10 wanders into my sights and I fire a quick burst at it, but don't hit, and then I pull up and go into vertical to get above all the turning planes. But not for long, I come around pretty quickly to hopefully get an enemy plane off someone's tail fast. I can spot an LA-7 below and I decide to attack it. I come down from above and line up a shot and fire, but the LA turns to the left when I am firing and my shots miss, and I go up in a loop to come down for another attack from above. It seems the LA-7 is turning after a friendly plane and I can get behind him to attack. My aim is a bit bouncy from maneuvering, but I do get a few hits and set the LA-7 on fire, and then pull up again. Now the LA-7 is damaged but not out of the fight yet, and as I look down while looping around, the only other enemy plane I can spot at this moment is the IL-10, which I consider to be not as important as the LA-7, so I go after the LA-7 again. So I push the nose down and come down behind him for another attack. And I fire another burst on him, which is not very well aimed and does not seem to do a lot of damage. Now after attack I go up and observe, hoping the LA-7 is damaged enough to go down eventually, but it seems he isn't, so I come around for one more attack to hopefully finish it off. I can see a Focke-Wulf 190 behind him, and I think he wants to attack as well for a moment, in which case I would have broken off my attack, but then it seems the 190 is breaking off without attacking, so I attack again. However, it seems the Focke-Wulf 190 did indeed also attack the LA-7 and hits him and sets him on fire. If I had known that, I would have stayed up to provide cover. Anyway, the LA-7 is going down and I pull back up. But just as I do so and look around for threats, another LA-7 is coming in from my left rear and attacking, and I have to take evasive action. I go into a barrel roll to evade and then push the nose down to speed up, and then I look back to see if the LA-7 is keeping up. Since he was coming up from below, there is a chance he was at lower speed. But the LA-7 is fast enough to stow behind me, and his top speed is higher than mine, so I have to fight him. I use barrel rolls and scissors to evade and hopefully draw him in closer. I should have called for help here, but in the heat of the moment with the constant evading I simply forgot to do so. As I roll to the right here, I stall a bit, which slows me down for a second, giving the LA-7 a chance to hit, and I take some damage to the left flap, but it's not too bad. I do another barrel roll to the left to evade, and lose sight of the LA for a second as I keep up a wide left barrel roll. As he comes down behind me, I switch direction and roll to the right. And then I reverse as he passes behind me and pull into him again. He is now slightly higher but also closer, and as I pull into him I push the nose down with the rudder a bit to not give him a shot as he passes, and then I come around and pull into him again, and again push the nose down as he is still a bit behind me and able to get a shot if he passes me otherwise. Now I can hear a second plane firing, and as the LA-7 is passing I can see a Yak-3B, but as the LA-7 is coming around I have to focus on him for now. I go into another barrel roll as he attacks, and then I pull into him again, and as I see him come down again, I go up into another wide barrel roll and try to roll around his flight path, hoping to get closer. But I can see that he will barely pass behind me, so I push the nose down again to evade as he comes around. And the LA-7 stalls as he tries to get a shot and spins for a second, which loses him some energy. Now I turn into him and try to roll out behind him as he levels out. He passes me and I follow, but with the damaged flap on the left wing I almost stall the plane as I turn after him. But now I am behind the LA-7, and as he comes around I can line up a shot. I fire a burst and I do get a hit, but I don't do much damage it seems. Now here I make a mistake though. I should have kept up my turn to the left, but instead in the heat of the moment I reverse and turn to the right again, which costs me my advantage. And on top of that, a Yak is coming in, attacking from behind, and as I focus on it for a second, the LA-7, I don't know if it's the same or not, comes in from the front. And as I start to go evasive again, I notice that I have now 3 Yaks as well as the LA-7 behind me. I try to evade, but with so many planes attacking from multiple angles, I can't prevent all of them from getting a shot. I now finally remember that it might be a good idea to call for some assistance, but it is too late. I take another hit which takes out my tail controls and my plane is going down. So this is it for this fight. I thought it had some interesting defensive flying, even though not ultimately successful. Well, let's take one more look at one short engagement in the BF-109 G-6. Now, we are on Coruscant again. The match just recently started and I was on my way to the middle of the map from the airfield as I spot some AAA again, and I moved there to check it out. As I approach, a Focke-Wulf 190 calls for help from that direction, and as it turns out there are 2 Focke-Wulf 190s down there fighting 2 or 3 enemy planes, and I move closer to assist. I dive towards one of the Focke-Wulf 190s in trouble, and as it passes in front of me I can spot an enemy plane behind it, but with the speed from my dive I can't get a shot at him from here, so I pull back up to loop around and attack from above. But as I come around and dive back down towards the Focke-Wulf 190, the attacker is hidden by one of my canopy bars and I can't see him for a bit as I come down, so I have to break off and pull up again, and the 190 goes down. But as I look back I can reacquire the enemy plane, and it's an LA-7P-20. So I come around again and dive on the LA-7. He turns tight to the right as I come down, and I try to line up his flight path and fire, but my shots go high and don't hit, so I pull up again. First in a slight climbing turn. If he would have continued to the right I could have gotten behind him, but he reversed and is coming my way, so instead I pull straight up and trade my speed back into altitude. As I look back I can see that the LA-7 is trying to climb after me, but he doesn't have the speed to do that, so I do a wing over and turn back towards the LA-7, which is just running out of speed. I line him up and fire as he passes my side and get a few good hits, enough to finish the LA-7 off. I start to pull up again, but I can see a second 109 being under attack by 2 Yaks to my left, so I loop around to assist. I'm a bit too late though, the 190 is already on fire. I dive towards the yaks, but I can't get them from this position as they turn, so I pull up into a high yo-yo to the right to get behind them. The 190 goes down though, and the yaks, one yak 1B and one yak 3B, split up. I think I might be able to get a shot of the yak 1's belly, so I pull up into it, but I notice I won't make it, so I ease up on the stick to avoid the collision and keep going to get some altitude back. I'm of course still on much higher energy than the yak, and the yak 1 is of course quite a bit inferior to the G-6. Now I come around and dive down for another attack as the yak 3 is in a tight right turn, and I line up the yak's flight path as it turns and fire. But again my shots are just a little bit too high and miss, and I pull up again to get the altitude for another attack. As I go up I keep an eye on the yak, which keeps up his turn and is coming my way, though on much lower altitude, and eventually he passes below me, and as he does so I roll around and do a split S and dive down after the yak. As I get closer the yak first turns to the right and to the left a bit, but as I close in it starts to turn hard to the right, and of course I immediately pull up as I know I can't get enough lead to fire here. So I go up and loop around once more. At first the yak keeps up its turn as I climb above it, but then it seems the yak pulls up and wends into a loop as well. Maybe he tries to go after me. But it seems he runs too low on speed, so as I come around I have a good opportunity to line up a shot, and this time I get a few good hits. But so far it seems I did not do much damage. So I go up again and loop around, thinking the yak is still in the fight. But as I do so it seems the yak is now quite low and slow, so maybe I did more damage than I thought. I still close in to make sure though, and as I get closer I can see that the yak indeed has a dead engine and is going down. Now here I should have pulled up and gained altitude again, as further attacks are not necessary, but since he was already in front of my sights I decide to fire another machine gun burst as I pass, just to make sure. Then I go up again and try to gain some distance from the fight, regain some altitude and throttle back to cool down my engine. It turns out though that it took me just a little bit too long with the yak, and as I look back I can see that I have multiple enemy planes closing in on me, some already in fire range. So I have to go defensive again. I push the nose down and then I check the map to see which direction the friendly airbase is. Sadly I'm flying the wrong direction at the moment, so I try to go for a slight turn to at least fly in the direction of the friendly airbase. But I have to stop that before I manage to turn around all the way, as the enemy planes close in. This time I remember to call for help though. Now I can see two planes behind me slowly coming closer, and I'm just about to start to evade them, when from the other side a third one comes in I have not seen coming, and he managed to hit my wing, and the damage is enough that my plane can't stay in the air any longer. So this is it for this fight. Also not the most successful one, but I had fun flying those two matches, and I hope they're fun to watch as well. Overall I have to say I like the G-6, but I kind of like all the BF-109s that don't have a solid steel armor plate behind the pilot. The G-6 though is in my opinion one of the more challenging 109s to do well in. Thanks to the opposition it faces at its battle rating, it is not very forgiving when you make a mistake. I still like flying it though, and well, this is it for this video. As always, I hope it was entertaining, thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.